Hi guys, and welcome to my One Piece video of the day. No chapter this week, so we're gonna do this. Flybydeath commented on one of my videos last week and said that I could do a top 10 One Piece villains list since I did the favorites thing a couple of months ago. But it would be interesting to hear my villains. My top villains? My favorite villains? So I'm gonna do like some kind of villain slash antagonist list this time. It's gonna be different from my favorite villains, I think, because I think there are 10 villains in my top 30 list. And when it comes to like just judging villains, I had like an entirely different approach to it. So just like so we understand what this list is. My top 10 villains slash antagonists, which I'm probably gonna call the video, I don't know yet, it's gonna be the people, a mix of just my faves, because it's hard to like be unbiased with this stuff, and also the people who I think have impacted the story in like a very meaningful way, and characters who I think were good for Luffy, if that makes sense. I'm gonna get deeper into that when I talk about it, but it's not just One Piece villains and antagonists, it's very specifically almost only people who I regard as antagonistic in accordance to Luffy, because there are like antagonists who are for other characters, like Tashigi. I will never call her an antagonist for Luffy. She's like Zoro's antagonist. And I also don't want to call this just villains, because I do have Marines or government people on this list, and they're not really villains. It's just so hard with One Piece, because like our main characters are not politically right. Like they have villains just because, you know, or enemies because they're criminals, so the good guys can be antagonists but not villains. So that's why I'm just gonna be the slash antagonist thing. So yeah, but let's get into the list. And also I probably have some people who are not on this list, which I'm gonna explain afterwards when I've done my list. But let's get into it, because I talked for 2 minutes about nothing. Okay, my number 10 on this list is Spandam. And he's one of the people who I think is not really Luffy's antagonist. He's probably more like in the Robin area. But he's important to put on this list, I feel like. Because Spandam is not the first encounter we've had with the government, but it's the first encounter we've had with the government being a very serious threat. And it's the first time we have Luffy like not necessarily taking the threat of the government seriously, but it's here that he acknowledges that the government is unfair as fuck. And even though they are pirates, Luffy does acknowledge this in this arc, and with this arc I mean Water 7 / Annie's Lobby, obviously. The shit that the government does is just not right. And they are an enemy that they need to take seriously, and that they will take on no matter what. So I don't like Spandam, but I like what Spandam does, because he's very outright about the government's brutality. The way he talks, he's very confident, and it's not that he shows no mercy, but he's very unapologetic in the fact that the government is very how do you say this, rightful, very like I don't have the words for this, but the government is just I'm just, you know what I mean, you read the series. But yeah, I think Spandam is important as a villain or as an antagonist. I could basically call him a villain because he's evil. But he's important just for Luffy to get like a more big picture moment of this entire adventure he's on, because it's not just about having fun, it's about also acknowledging the enemies that you're making in the progress and how that impacts the entire thing, because you have these one-time villains, as we'll get to later, who are nothing more than one-time villains. We'll probably never see them again. Of those people, I have like 2 maybe on this list, but there are a lot of them. But the government is an entirely different thing, because they keep coming back for them. And I just, again, it's not like Luffy hasn't realized it at this point, because the Marines are still like a thing. But the government itself, I think it's important to have that. And I could have put Lucci here instead, but I put Spandam because he was like the representative of the entire government. And now I've talked way too much about a character no one likes. Let's move to my number 9, who is the last person on this list who I don't really regard as Luffy's antagonist, but in a way I kind of still do. And that's Arlong, because Arlong is more Nami's antagonist. But Arlong, I think, is also important, and it's again one of those big picture moments for Luffy, because I think Arlong, or at least in the fight against Arlong, it's when the Straw Hats is solidified as a crew, and Luffy really, not for the first time, but just really for the biggest time, I don't know, it just really solidifies his role as the captain, but also solidifies why it's important for him to have crew members. Like, I've said this before, but one of my favorite speeches or moments from One Piece is when Luffy admits that he can't do everything by himself, and it's in that fight against Arlong. And one of the reasons is just because Arlong is one of the first people who is stronger than Luffy. Just downright stronger than Luffy. You can probably make the argument that Don Krieg is as well, but it's another discussion, I guess. But he's like not out of Luffy's league, but he's stronger than that, and stronger than Luffy, and I think that's very important to know that Luffy has this ability to overcome stuff that he shouldn't be able to overcome, or yeah, just Arlong is very great for what he does for the story, and that's mainly why he's on this list. Okay, now on to my top 8, which is a lot more fun to talk about, because they're not like big world stuff. My number 8 is Lucci. Lucci is on this list for a lot of reasons. Don't feel sad that he's so far down. I really like him, and the Luffy versus Lucci fight is really like, it's so good. It's so good, which is it's a big reason why Lucci's on this list. And I believe Oda said once, a couple years ago, that Lucci is the person who's been closest to killing Luffy in just like terms of pure combat or something, which is, wow, cool. Weird thing to say this cool, but yeah. But Lucci is also like he's the weapon kind of thing. I talked about Spandam before, how he's like the representative of the government, about how the government is just like, still don't have a word for that. But Lucci is Spandam's weapon, and I think it's so interesting, because I think this is the first time where Luffy's up against an opponent who does not actually have a motive for themselves. Because every time Luffy has had like some sort of enemy, it's always been like a marine who wants to catch him, or it's been someone who was like, oh, you're interfering, you're in my territory, go away. Or he's trying to recruit some crew member and they're messing with their lives. Like, there's always some reason. The antagonist always has a reason to be antagonistic towards Luffy or want to start a fight. Lucci is just following orders. Which makes his approach very brutal, because he doesn't really, like, he doesn't want anything from Luffy. He just needs to get rid of this obstacle. Which I think is one of the reasons why Luffy was having such a difficult time. Like, he can't really, because Luffy, to begin with, isn't the kind of person who's like psychological warfare. He's like, ooh, when you accomplish your goals, you're gonna be like this. He just fights. But at the same time, because Lucci doesn't have a goal, it's like, I think it just, as I said, makes him more brutal, and that was hard for Luffy to deal with, because again, in terms of strength, he was so much stronger than Luffy, and Luffy needed to pull everything out of himself to just win. And then afterwards, he was like pretty much dead. So yeah, I don't really have too much to say about Lucci here, but he's just such an awesome villain because he doesn't have a motive like everyone else has. And I think that's really cool. That's my number 7. I've made several videos about this guy, and you're probably surprised that he's so far down. But my number 7 goes to Blackbeard. I'm not gonna talk too much about Blackbeard because I talked about him in my in my death prediction video, and I have 2 videos just on Blackbeard. But quickly, one of the reasons that he's not in the top 5 or in the top 3 is basically because I don't think we've seen like the potential of Blackbeard as a villain yet. It's not that he hasn't done much, like he's done a lot of shit, but he hasn't really done everything yet. So the potential is there, but at this point in the story, he just hasn't done too much yet. However, at the same time, he has done a lot of shit. And he is, as I've said before, a perfect antagonist to Luffy, because they're at one point, like, in some parts of their personalities, they are just polar opposites, yet they still kind of have a lot of similarities when it comes to dreams and stuff like that. Because the first encounter they had like this, I don't want to call it a bonding moment, but they were on the same wavelength with how Blackbeard was like, dreams come true and all that stuff. And then the second time they meet, they want to kill each other. But I think Blackbeard is a super interesting villain, and I love everything he's done for the series so far, but I think because I know his bigger moments are still to come, I can't in good conscience put him over the people who have done much more for the story. And I will say this, for like two, maybe, I think for only one character on my list, or further up my list, they have actually fulfilled their role, but Blackbeard, because he's meant to be the last top villain, probably. I just think I can't put him over the others yet, because he's not been that prominent in Luffy's personal life, except for, like, you know, the death of Ace and all that crap. So just, yeah, that's why he's so far down. I know he'll get higher up the list, possibly top 3, probably top 3 whenever the series is over. Okay, now for my number 6. Enel. Enel, okay. A lot of reasons why Enel is here. Enel is, first of all, probably the villain I just personally hate the most. Like, if I could punch one character in the face, I would choose Enel. So that's just a reason that he's there. Like, if you can make me hate a character so much that I want to punch them, he should probably be high on the list. Another reason is that the Enel versus Luffy fight is my favorite fight. I've talked about this before, I'm not gonna talk too much about that again. The third thing, and the most important thing, which links to why this fight is my favorite, is because it forced Luffy to not only think outside the box, but think logically, to fight logically, to have a sort of tactic in dealing with Enel. And I've talked about this in both my Luffy analysis videos, I think, how one of my favorite sides of Luffy is when he gets really smart in combat. Because while he may not be like your normal type of intelligent, he is a fighting genius. And I like when you see that very intelligent side of Luffy in battle, that we almost only see in battle, and recently a little bit outside of battle, which is really nice. But that's the reason why Buggy, why Enel is my number 6. It's because of him drawing out that much of Luffy's raw intelligence, I want to call it, out of him, because a few other people have done that as well before Enel, but Enel just, the Enel versus Luffy fight is a pinnacle of Luffy using his intelligence to beat an enemy, I believe. Okay, my number 5. My number 5 is Buggy, which was why I accidentally said it before. Buggy, okay, first of all, he's a reoccurring villain, which makes me love him a lot more, because when you see a person that many times, it's just great, because he has a reoccurring role in Luffy's life. Oh, that sounded weird. But every time he meets Luffy, he has a different role to play. Either he's the small-time antagonist that's terrorizing a village, or he's the evil villain who has a really, really bad plan to kill off Luffy because he holds a grudge against him, or he's the prison tour guide that tries to kind of take him to where Luffy wants to go and still tries to play him and just completely fails. And then we have all the behind-the-scenes stuff of Buggy just trying to run a crime syndicate and just failing at being a basic pirate. So yeah, Buggy is there because of the relationship he's ended up building with Luffy, because they're just not friends, but they know each other, and they always end up helping each other out somehow. Or mostly Buggy helping Luffy out. It's a weird thing they have going on. But Buggy is a lot of fun, because he's also connected to Roger and Shanks, and he's just a great character. That's mostly why he's up here. Like I said, it's hard to be unbiased with this list. And in terms of like what he's done for the story, just like as a story, he would probably be a little lower on the list, but just because I love him so much, he makes the top 5. Now for my next one, number 4, Smoker. Smoker is another recurring character. It's been a while since we've seen him, but Smoker is great too. Smoker is a Marine, obviously, which means that he's the one antagonist slash villain. I'm just gonna call him an antagonist because he's not a villain. That Luffy expected to have even before the journey began. But now he just has mostly one Marine always trying to catch him because he pissed him off. And that's another thing with Smoker. He is a lot like Buggy. Even though he's supposed to be Luffy's antagonist, he sometimes ends up helping him, like in Alabasta. Which is just, I think that's really great because that's the thing I really love about both Buggy and Smoker. They can put aside their hatred towards Luffy to realize that they need to work together towards an urgent common goal, like getting out of prison, in both cases. So yeah, that's mostly why Smoker is there as well. Just a cool character with a cool motive, and just he's a cool guy who's a cool antagonist that I would love to see again because it's been a while. It's really been a while. Number 3. Okay, my number 3 might surprise you, but I have my reasons, and I'm gonna talk a lot about my top 3, which means that this video is gonna get really long. But my top 3 was basically like, they were so easy for me to write. Like, I spent like an hour on this. You may not believe, but I spent an hour on this list. And my top 3, I made those in like 3 seconds. Because they were very easy for me to pin down for some reason. But my number 3 is Magellan. The reason that Magellan is my number 3 is because he is the first antagonist that Luffy not only faces entirely on his own, like entirely, there's literally no one there to support him because Mr. Chu just kind of runs off, and his crew isn't there. Like, that's a big reason why Magellan is here. And he has a complete and utter loss, and the second time that he comes face to face with Magellan, he immediately understands that the best course of action is to run away from this guy. Even though he does want to fight him, but he understands that he shouldn't do that, because he was already dying the first time, and it's not. But Magellan, because while it's not the first time Luffy loses, he lost to a bunch of guys before this. Luffy has, while he has a good winning streak, he's definitely also lost a lot of times, even though usually he comes back and then kicks that person's ass afterwards. But this is also after a huge failure where he lost his entire crew at Shibandi. But Magellan just was an entirely different beast from like Kizaru and whoever they fought before that, like all the Kuma, what the heck are they called? The Pacifistas. I was like, what? But Magellan just, he did something to Luffy, psychologically, physically, that I don't think anyone has really done the same things to Luffy that Magellan did, because Magellan was just, again, he's a righteous guy. He's the prison warden, so he obviously tries to capture Luffy because Luffy is a criminal in running free inside a prison trying to free other criminals. So that's not gonna stand. And he's just doing his job. But differently from Lucci, because again, Lucci was just the weapon. Magellan has like a reason, a sense of pride, a sense of duty. And he breaks Luffy down completely, and the poison does weird things to Luffy's head as well. And it's a villain, or it's a character, I'm just gonna say a character, who I think we will see again at some point, because there's so much potential, but I don't know how or when. But I would love to see Luffy fight him again, to see how he's improved and how he would deal with a villain like Magellan, because I still think he would lose at this point against Magellan, just because he's the compatibility between his fighting style and just Magellan's powers in general are not good. And again, because Magellan isn't the kind of person I think Luffy would fight of his own free will, but because Ace's life was on the line here, he had to. And I just think he did something very interesting to Luffy's psychology in the moment that he fought him, and the desperation in that fight from Luffy, obviously, it was very, very interesting to watch. It's a sort of fight I rewatch when I want to feel bad. You know, when you have that feeling you want to feel sad and you want to cry, that's one of the fights I would go watch, because it's very heartbreaking to watch him just break down like that, because obviously the poison has its effect as well, but it's very much because of also what just happened to Chibani, basically. Like, he just lost his entire crew, and now he's on the verge of losing Ace as well. It's everything is just tumbling down for him at this point. So yeah, that's why Magellan is my number 3, and I hope we see him again, because he's a good guy. I really love him. Just like his personality as well. It's so good. Number 2. This one I was a little, I didn't know if I could, like, in conscience, put this character this far up the list, because we're in the middle of exploring this character, but I put Big Mom here. And the reason I put Big Mom here is it was very important for me that she made it, because, she is the first Yonko who we're really interacting with and really feeling the pressure of. Because yes, we've met Whitebeard, we've met Shanks, we've met Blackbeard. Whitebeard and Shanks were not antagonists, and Blackbeard, as I said, he hasn't really done it yet. Like, every time he's seen Luffy, it's just been like, oh hey, there you are, let's go. He's not really, there hasn't been, not that there hasn't been tension, but they haven't had a fight yet. Luffy has once tried to start a fight, but Blackbeard didn't really care. It was just, yeah. But Big Mom has done a lot of things. As I talked about with the Enel thing, about Luffy being intelligent and all that stuff. Big Mom, or the threat of her and her entire crew, has really, really allowed Luffy to show off his intelligence. I was very, very happy when, like, I made that entire Luffy analysis talking about how intelligent he is, and then the next chapter, like, that dropped a few days after I made that video, just showed off how intelligent Luffy has become. I was very happy about that coincidence. Because Big Mom has made Luffy, I don't want to say cautious, but he's definitely thinking things through. Because before, he was the type of person to really just rush into everything, and he could not follow a plan. When you think about this arc, he has been very careful, and he has been following plans, and he's listened to others, even others who aren't necessarily his friends. He listened to Capone, despite the first thing he told Capone was, I really want to punch you in the face. And I really, really love that Big Mom had such an impact on Luffy, because a Yonko is really the top dude, right? Or the top dudes, there are 4 of them. But I love the impact that has had on Luffy, and I'm so sad that we have not, like, had Kaido yet as an antagonist, because he would probably make this list as well. But I think having Big Mom here now is just so great as a warm-up to Kaido, because again, this is a villain who Luffy knows he wants to beat, but he can't do it. He said multiple times, we're not here to fight her, and even when he's like, I really want to punch her in the face, he's just like, I'm gonna do it once and then we run. Which has been so great, because I love when Luffy acknowledges that he's still lagging. Because I really, it's not that I hate the protagonists who are like, oh, I can do everything if I just put my mind to it. I like it when the protagonist can say that, but also at the same time acknowledge that sometimes they're just not there yet. And they might have the potential to be there at some point, because Luffy has said at multiple times he's gonna take down all 4 Yonko, and I believe him when he says that. But he's just not ready yet, and he knows that, and it's so great that he acknowledges it, and that he acknowledges with the crew he has with him at this point, he's just not strong enough, because, again, going back to the Arlong thing, he can't do everything by himself. And it's great to see that he still knows he can't do everything by himself, and that he knows that even at his best, he can't take out someone as strong as Big Mom. Like, even against Katakuri, he's struggling, and while he may be the top commander, he's just not Big Mom. And then there's just like Big Mom as a character. I really, really enjoy her. I have said, when people have asked who's my favorite Yonkoik, I have said Big Mom the past couple of months. But that is also due to the fact that she's just the Yonko we know the most about at this point, so I mean, what can I say? So yeah, that is one of the big reasons why Big Mom is my second. And also we've had her, like, we've seen her, or not seen her, but we had like snippets of her throughout the entire New World saga. And I love how she does things. That she's very territorial, and she makes deals with people. Like, she's very unforgiving, and doesn't know how to show mercy, but it is part of her brutal personality, and I really do like that as someone who's just as insane as she is. It does for a really good villain. So yeah, that's why Big Mom was my number 2. My number 1 favorite villain / antagonist might not come as a surprise to you, because I say constantly that this guy is my favorite villain, and that is Crocodile. 90% of this is just bias, but I do have legitimate reasons for why I think he's not necessarily the best villain. I think best villain, that would take me like 3 days to figure out who that might be, and he might still make the top 3, but I don't know. But Crocodile is my fave for a lot of reasons. First of all, he is the I don't want to say, as I said before, Arlong was the first like villain who I think were stronger than Luffy, but I think Crocodile was the first who was a lot stronger than Luffy when they fought. And he's also, I think, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but I do think this is the first fight we see Luffy legitimately lose. You know, the first fight he has against Crocodile, and Robin saves him from literally dehydrating and being buried under sand. Which I love when Luffy loses. I've said this before, but it's really great to see him lose, because not that it humanizes him, because he is still a fictional character, but it makes the threat seems real that he won't always win. And it makes him, in every battle where Luffy has lost first before winning, he's used his brain a lot more, which again is just one of my favorite sides of Luffy, because he is so much more intelligent than we give him credit for, even if it's not in the traditional sense. And Crocodile again is a reoccurring character, even though there's long gaps between us seeing him. But he was just like, even if he had just been a standalone character in Alabasta, he would probably not have made my number 1, but he would have made my top 3, definitely. And just the fact that he's there again in Impel Down and Marineford and further down the line in the story, that just rises him to my favorite character. And he's also just so complex. Like, the entire Marineford arc, just focusing on Crocodile in that arc is just so great, because he saves Luffy and he's mad at Luffy. They start a fight. He tries to kill Blackbeard, or not Blackbeard, he tries to kill Whitebeard, then he saves Luffy and he saves Ace, and he has history with the Flamingo. There's so much to Crocodile and his secret past that Ivankov knows of. There's so much to uncover with this character, which makes him so interesting, not just as a villain, but just as a character in general, which is what I like more about him than any other person on this list. Because with most of these people, with maybe the exception of Buggy, and Blackbeard, I think, Crocodile is just, and Big Mom, I guess, but really mostly Buggy and Blackbeard, because they are like recurring characters. Crocodile's character intrigues me so much, because we don't really know that much about him, despite him having been the top villain in a really, really long saga, and reoccurring villain / weird ally / I don't know what to call him, and just a character who we just see glimpses of in cover stories, and we hear about him, or we see a little picture of him in a newspaper. Like, there's so much to this character that I just love so much, and I want to find out more about him. He is of these 10 characters here, he's the one person who, if I could choose one person's story to follow, I would choose Crocodile's, because he's just really cool. And on top of that, Crocodile created the coolest organization we have in One Piece. I think Baroku Works is the best. I like the equal, like, male-female thing he had going on, and I like that he allowed Mr. 2 to just have himself and his own crew just be there, because it was like, oh, well, male, female, I don't know, you're just your own thing. You can fill out both roles, that's cool. And I like his style, even though he's a piece of shit. Like, he used Robin like a literal tool, and threw her aside the moment that she didn't want to give him what he wanted. He's a piece of shit, and I love him. And I think he's so complex again, because Luffy literally threw him in prison. Like, he's the reason that Crocodile was in prison. And he still chose to save his life because he believed in Luffy's ideology in that war more than he believed in the Marines and the government. And I think that says a lot about Crocodile. Like, while he will always choose himself over other people, he also has, like, a sense of ideology and rightfulness. Because he could, if he really was that selfish, he would probably just have chosen to kill off Luffy because that was a great opportunity. But he chose to save himself. And I think that's super great. There's so much to Crocodile that I wish to uncover, and I can't because I don't have all the pieces yet. And one day I'm probably gonna make a video about him, because when I start thinking about it, I have so many ideas and theories about him. I just need to go through all the popular Crocodile theory videos to make sure I don't repeat something someone has already said, because just making theories about, ooh, I think Crocodile used to be a woman, that's not interesting anymore. I'm not gonna do that. But yeah, that Crocodile is my favorite villain for a lot of reasons, mostly just because I love him so much. But I want to address two characters that I did not put on the list, who you're probably wondering why we're not on the list. First one is Doflamingo. I like Doflamingo. I think he's a cool character, especially because he was very much like a puppet master, yeah? And he was behind a lot of the things, like with Bellamy, and he did a lot of shit in the war, like just doing weird stuff. And he has connections to weird people, and we still don't know what happened with him and Moria. I think Doflamingo did a lot of cool shit, but Doflamingo has never once seemed like an antagonist made for Luffy. And again, with Arlong and Spandam, they were antagonists for other Straw Hats. But Luffy still kind of, like, it was made Luffy's problem because they were his crewmates. Doflamingo was Law's antagonist. Law is not a Straw Hat, and it doesn't feel the same to call Doflamingo Luffy's antagonist as much as it feels better or more right to call Spandam and Arlong Luffy's antagonist, because there's a difference in, like, a legitimate Straw Hat member and Law, who's just a really good friend / ally. So that's why Dofi isn't on that list. He probably wouldn't have made it that high just because I love my top 5 more as reoccurring / good characters. Not that I don't think that Doflamingo's great. I really do love him. I think he's a great crazy guy. But that's mainly the reason that he's not there. The next character is Akainu, and the reason that I don't have him on my list is also the reason why Blackbeard is so far down my list. Akainu has not done as much yet as I know he will do. As the head of the Marines, he has a lot more power now to just exercise a lot of chaos. And I think what he's gonna do as an antagonist to Luffy is gonna be much more I don't want to say devastating, but just much more impactful than when he killed Ace, because Luffy blames Blackbeard for Ace's death. Akainu, while the methods he used in the war were horrible, it was his job to kill Ace. He didn't do it out of spite, he didn't do it just because he didn't like him, he did it because it was his job, and he was a criminal set for execution, and Akainu just ended up being the executioner. But Blackbeard was really the reason that he died. So for that reason, because the I don't know what to call it, the things that Aka Inu will do later in the story, I think will, he hasn't reached his height of his antagonistic ways, that's why, because he did also, like, he did give Luffy the scar, yes, and Luffy does hate him, yes, like, when he hears that Aka Inu has become head of the Marines, he has that very bitter, sour expression, and I'm not gonna take that away from Aka Inu, as a villain or an antagonist, because he has made an impact on Luffy, but so has a lot of other guys who I have not mentioned. And because I think there's so much potential in Aka Inu, I cannot, in good conscience, put him on my list, because I think when, not the series is done, but maybe when the series is done, I don't know, this list will have changed. Blackbeard will probably be in my top 3, Aka Inu will probably be in my top 5, Crocodile will probably stay in my number 1 spot. But yeah, because Aka Inu has just not done something that I count as the height, and he is not the main as Blackbeard, the main villain as Blackbeard. I cannot put him on the list yet, and it's the same with Aoki, Genki, Sato. They're like, they are weird for me to rank because they have like a different impact on the story that just doesn't work for this list. But I do like all of these characters, like, they're all great. So that is my list. So, starting from the top, Crocodile, Big Mom, Magellan, Smoker, Buggy, Enel, Blackbeard, Lucci, Arlong, and Spandam. Yeah, that was probably a little bit of a weird list, because I had weird, like, criteria for what I wanted to put on my list, but it was like, I wanted to have some kind of structure, and since Luffy's the main character, and he's the guy we really do follow, that was the route I decided to go down. Because I want to shout out, like, people like, Perona, I thought she was a good antagonist for, or just a good person for Usopp, and Kaku versus Zoro is a good fight as well, like, and Khalifa, just entire CP9 were just like really good antagonists, but I just didn't want this to be like, oh, here are 5 good villains and the rest of the CP9. So yeah, I'm gonna stop talking now, because wow, this is almost 40 minutes long. I did not mean for it to be that long, I'm so sorry. That's what happens when I talk faves. I just love it a lot, and I just go off on a tangent, and I don't write a script, so. But yeah, this is my top 10 One Piece villains / antagonists. That's probably just gonna be the title of the video, or whatever. So you can leave a thumb if you liked anything that I had to say, I guess. Leave in the comments below, your top 10 favorite villains / antagonists, or what you think of the characters I have on my list. Or give me a long rant about your favorite villain. I don't know, just I want to know, because maybe some of you thought of something I didn't, and you were like, this character impacted the story this way, and I was like, yeah, damn, I forgot that, or I didn't see it in that way, so maybe you can teach me something, I don't know. And yeah, you can subscribe if you want to see more of this. I'm also gonna leave a link to my top 30 characters in case you're interested in that. And yeah, I guess that's it, so until next time, guys, bye!